Morning, everyone. I'm Marion Chaudhry, the Chair of Family Association. I want to thank you everyone for showing up today. We'll go around and introduce ourselves for everyone that doesn't know everyone. The agenda for today is welcome. And then thank you for Sarah and the counseling team supporting your child through social relationships. This counseling team and Sarah will discuss how they handle that. And we'll also, any volunteer opportunities coming up, we'll discuss at the end. Make sure you get your clearances. And that's it.
But I'm really glad that you're here with us to talk about this. I know that Mr. Rodrigo and Abby and I can probably sit here and talk to you about like all of the every single problematic thing that's happening, and we've got map scores back. It's like the learning is happening, progress is happening, the growth and achievement scores both look really good. We're working on some curricular things this year with science, and we'll have lots of those updates to go through at another time. But one of the things that we wanted to focus on after getting some really good feedback from our 4th to 5th grade transition night last year was some information that parents were telling us felt really helpful about friendship transitions, particularly in the lower school. And the idea of normalizing some of the really research-backed things that we know about what friendships look like and social dynamics look like as children are getting older. And I think it's really important that we were getting feedback and saying I didn't realize that this was normal for these changes to happen, and for us and strategies and tips for us as parents to help guide our students through these changes as they happen, because when they happen, they feel so big to students, and particularly our students, because there are lovely, wonderful, amazing things about having a small social circle in a small independent school where you have 16 kids in your classroom. And then as a student, I went to an independent school where I had the same 16 children in my class from preschool through 8th grade. And there are lovely, beautiful things about that. And also there were some hard parts. And particularly from both the student side and the parent side of trying to help through those changes and really shepherding our children. So we thought that this could be a really great opportunity to be able to talk through those things. And so I thought that it would be a really great idea to have our counselors, Dr. Hunt and Mrs. Hanamopoulos, with us too, as we work as a team on the school front to really help manage those relationships and help, again, shepherd the students.
All right. So one of the things we actually met with 5th grade at the beginning of this school year. We sat them all in this very room and talked through a lot of these same topics to give them a heads up, like what this year might look like, how things might be changing, just kind of like a preview of things to come, especially as they transition from the lower school to middle school. And I thought it would be fun. We could put the next slide up for you guys to do the same activity that they did. So I want you guys to think back to your younger years and answer the following questions as it applies to you. So you can feel free to raise your hand if you feel comfortable, thumbs up, mental thumbs up in your head, however you're comfortable participating. So if this applies to you, I'd like you to identify, I have friends that are older and or younger than me. Maybe not the same exact age as you, but older and younger. All right. I've had the same best friends since elementary or middle school. Anybody have the same friends? Okay. I have never felt left out by my friends. All right. And I've had friendships change within the last year. Okay. Yeah. So what I wanted us to do in here, and also the kids to do when they were with us, is to recognize that a lot of these changes, a lot of these things are normal in the sense of people experience that. Adults, we experience that. Kids experience that. Fluctuations in friendships, relationships that change and shift. Different experiences, but again, that's part of life, that's part of growing up, that's part of getting older. So I wanted them to see that and for us to kind of get in that headspace as well, because I thought it'd be fun. Let's see. Very good. Next slide, please.
Okay, so here's some cuties. So what's expected, and we'll talk a bit more in depth about each of these things. But as what we notice in school is that we might have students come to us and say, this person told me that they didn't like this and that they don't want to be my friend. And they'll come to us and say, help me solve this problem. And that is part of our job to help solve that problem. And so we see students coming to us asking for the tools to help manage those conflicts within their relationships. And so we work both programmatically with our second step curriculum to talk about conflict resolution, creating and maintaining friendships. And so programmatically in that way, but also in a reactionary way when there is a problem outside of academic time to try to help them problem solve. We're not trying to actually remove a problem, but help them work through the problem. Because my goodness, is that a life skill that they will need moving forward as young adults and as adults. And making sure that we're normalizing for them, just like we're normalizing for parents, that these shifts in friendship are normal and expected. And then again, preventatively giving and proactively giving them the tools to help manage those shifts. And again, normalize for them that those changes are part of their growth, and letting them know that again, those skills and becoming adept in those skills are going to carry them through, helping them thrive in their adolescence, their teenagers, and then in adulthood as well. So those are the things that we see students coming to us with, but we'll talk a little bit more in depth about it. So for those of you who know me, you know that anything that I think about, I always go to the research first to kind of guide my thought process and to really help inform our programs, our practices, and how we are helping children. And so one of the things that we recognize is the idea of the phenomenon called friendship fluidity, particularly in younger relationships in early elementary into upper elementary, and then it continues into middle school. And understanding that friendship fluidity causes uncomfortability, right? Both in children and then in the parents who are helping to guide them and manage those relationships as well. And so just being able to sit and say, this feels icky, this feels yucky, it feels uncomfortable, but then also reminding ourselves that research shows us that studies are that children keep about 50 to 75% of their friendships over one school year. So when you think about that in the context of a smaller school environment, that feels like a big deal, right? When you only have 16, 17 kids in your classroom. And then we know that this is expected, that friendship change is expected to the point where it's been studied and we can actually quantify it. And knowing that the research is behind it helps us then normalize it for ourselves and our adult friends and to talk to our children about it too. It's also important to notice that these developmental shifts happen both from like a pre-K through a first grade position when they are shifting from imaginative play, which is great, and we want to encourage that as much as possible. But also then they're creating naturally deeper relationships as they get older and they're identifying shared interests and things that they are interested in, and they find it purely, oh my gosh, I like soccer, you like soccer? Like, oh my gosh, let's nerd out about soccer, right? I'm sure those are not the words that they use, but in my 40-year-old brain, that's where I but as their personal interests change, so do some of those connections that they make. And also, again, normalizing that that's natural and normal. And then making sure that we're recognizing that as students get older, as your children get older, there's a shift from you being kind of like the centric part of who they want to be around to then naturally gravitating toward their peers and the people who they are really connecting with in that moment. And there's also that shift between your child and you in that relationship. There's a little bit of like a gradual release as well. And shepherding through that. So really just noticing and saying that this is a normal part of child development and that there are strategies that we can use to help them. And I've already talked about a little bit about this, but not only is it a normal natural part of child development, but it actually builds those skills that they need for life in terms of different friendships, teaching them flexibility, empathy, conflict resolution, communication, and show me an adult who does not deeply need those skills and use them on a daily basis. And then building that resilience, the ability to work through a problem rather than give up and quit. I always talk to my children about it's okay to take a break rather than quit, right? Like it's about that building resiliency. And then again, finding their people. I don't know if anyone knows that Grey's Anatomy reference, right? Like you're my person. And being able for them to then identify who their people are, maintain those relationships as appropriate, and then also gain newer friendships and understand that the existence of one friendship doesn't necessarily take away from the ability to have another thriving relationship and friendship too.
All right. More fun pictures up there. And I purposely put 2 different grades on there, so different ages of friends, because I want to talk a little bit about the landscape, what it looks like and how friendships change. Dr. Vanderbeck already touched on this a little bit. But just looking at the beginning school to kind of the 2nd grade, some more play-based stuff. I know when you go out at recess, if you go to 1st and 2nd grade recess, you'll see friendship groups split up by what they're playing. So are they playing gaga ball? Are they playing imaginative on the playground? Are they playing soccer? You'll see some different groups, and sometimes the kids will rotate. Sometimes they'll one day find something different, and that's a different group they're hanging out with. So you're going to see it based on more of what they're doing than kind of who they're doing it with. And again, those could shift, like I said, shift daily. They could be doing one thing one day, something else the other day. Whereas 3rd and 5th grade, when you go out to recess, and using those as examples, you will see a lot of the same kids kind of trending together. What they're doing can sometimes change, but usually the groups that they're sticking with are often similar to the day before. So they start to make kind of deeper connections, more of what they're interested in, more of what they like to do. We do see a lot more emphasis on the idea of loyalty and inclusion, bringing people in, and that social identity piece. But with that also comes some more conflicts. So-and-so played with me yesterday and the day before, and now today they said they didn't want to play. What do I do? How do I handle that? I feel left out. I wanted to play too. And so figuring out how to navigate through those conflicts. We're actually currently teaching more assertive communication, how to use your I statements, I feel, or I want, to be able to navigate those with friends. So it's kind of our program meets our what's going on the playground and being able to do that together. All right, next slide. I think this is you.
Yep. So I'm not a school counselor as by my training. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I really love what I do and love what I do here because I get to. When I worked previously, it was working in my office and seeing things after they became a big problem. I love being able to work proactively and highlight where there's a problem and what they can do to change that or how they can embrace that change. And I really try to highlight and underline when they're using their skills, when they're trying to do things that are tough, when they're sitting with discomfort. So that's super duper important. We really do that in a developmentally appropriate way. And trying to also highlight what their need is in that moment. And it's a need for connection often. It's a need for similarness and kind of like people, idea that Dr. Vanderbeck mentioned. And also, guiding them through that decision making in again, a developmentally appropriate way. And trying to be out present on the playground or halls or before school, after school, when they're having some of that free time. Also talking to them about unstructured time. They're not thinking about that as much. Our kids are pretty structured and we're really great at structure here. When they have unstructured time is where they're struggling a little bit more. So we try to make ourselves present in those moments and be around for that, to have a impromptu in vivo conversation about that. We had an awesome conversation in 4th grade yesterday about social comparison, and I had them raise their hand. They compared themselves to others, and all the hands went up, and they commented on, I thought I was the only one doing this, like really bring that before it becomes a voice in the back of my head, sneaky problem that becomes a big problem. So I think, trying to work proactively. We've been working on getting the kids to request time with us. Our older kids will use we put a link to a Google form that they'll have on their iPad. We have QR codes around. For the younger kids, we have a slip that they can fill out, put it in a mailbox that Mrs. E made and train them to put the flag up when there's a letter in there, life skill. And we get them regularly. It's like I'm having an issue with friends, and we will go after and talk that. We will say, hey, if you're comfortable, I'd like to help with this conversation. We've done it over lunch, we've done it informally on the playground. And that's really where the magic happens. And it's also just encouraging them to, all right, this is an opportunity for growth. We will often say you don't grow from a place of comfort. If you think about that in your own life, I think that's a really true statement. When we have discomfort or a problem, that's where we have to think. We have to critically think. We have to do some soul searching, think about what's important to us. So those are just important life skills. We were seeing a lot of fifth grade drama and stress about friendship in my friend group, and it's not okay. I said, it is okay. And we would talk about that fluidity and talk about the changes, and really also teaching, this is a time that you need to practice some relaxation and take a deep breath. Things will be okay. The sun will come up tomorrow. And I love being able to shepherd our kids through that and sit with them at a hard moment and really highlight for them, hey, you did the hard thing. Like, reflect back after and say, aren't we in a better spot now? And it really teaches them some important life skills, especially such a small, tight group where there's not a great deal of choice of friendships, and they will change over time. Next slide, please.
So you may have heard of intentionally using the word shepherd as we talk about our roles as adults in their lives, and particularly as parents. Dr. Buckley introduced this idea of being a shepherd as a parent, not being an engineer. So I mean, being married to an engineer, definitely understand the idea of the design, the intentional building of things to kind of exact the outcome that you want. And as a parent, understanding that your child is an individual, they are going to grow. And I can tell the students this, and sometimes they look at me like I have 5 heads, but I expect that they are going to make mistakes, right? Like every single one of them. I expect they're going to make mistakes. And I would rather them make mistakes with me than when they get to Mr. Andrico, right? Like, I want you to learn in the lower, so I want you to, as on the last slide, push those boundaries a little bit, learn where those lines are, right? Not to the detriment of other people, right? But it is developmentally appropriate for you to have a misstep, to have to learn something through a mistake. And for us to then focus on the learning that comes after. And so the students do look at you and like, what do you expect to make a mistake? That's contrary to what I thought I was expecting. But it's really important for us to think, even as I think of this as myself as a parent too, it's not necessarily my job to remove the obstacle, to remove the problem for my child. It is my job to model how to problem solve, to provide tools without micromanaging how they're doing it. And that, in my own experience, is so much harder than saying, let me just handle this for you. Like, I got this. I'll call the teacher. I'm gonna fix this for you. You don't have to worry about it, right? That part, the guiding, the modeling, the asking the question without leading them necessarily to the answer, like that is like the work of parenting. And in like my professional role, it's a little bit easier, right? Like I'm not your mom. I can help you do this, right? And really the wonderful part of my job outside of the joy of being with your children every day is the relationship that I get to build with parents too, in being shepherds together and that partnership. So like making sure that we are asking children to reflect and live in that place of empathy of how do you think the other person feels right now too? What do you think they could have been thinking in that moment? Those reflective, empathetic questions can be really helpful. Teaching those solving strategies instead of, again, going to, this is not, I need you to fix this for me. It is a wonderful idea to partner with your parent, with your child's teacher. But again, like that removal of the obstacle altogether doesn't necessarily help in the long run. Normalizing disappointments when friendships are shifting. I use a lot of validating language. Oh my gosh, that feels hard. I hear you saying that feels hard. That probably would feel hard for me too, if I were you. And just a lot of normalizing that. And then modeling healthy adult friendships too. Making sure that we're not talking to our kiddos about like actual conflicts that we're having with people, but then normalizing like, this is a hard moment and this is how I handled it. And then again, avoiding that engineering, being overly involved, forcing friendships and managing every hurt. When the kid comes home and they say this happened and they're, crying in your kitchen at the end of the day, likely before they've had a snack and some quiet time, right? But listening, validating, and then as a parent, trying to parse out what the difference is between was it something that maybe hurt their feelings or something that was hard during the day versus something that would require a phone call to me or a teacher about like a disciplinary action, right? And sometimes sifting through those two things is hard. And I'm always willing to, if you want to call and say, this is what my child is reporting, can you just ask around or find out what happened or things like that. I'm always happy to partner with you that way. But sometimes there is a little bit of, it was an interpersonal conflict where a disciplinary infraction did not occur, but then we worked together to try to help manage the situation and work through it. And we'll talk a little bit on another slide about the difference between the counseling role, my role, the difference between managing interpersonal conflict versus when something truly was outside of the bounds of our behavioral expectations for students.
This is where we come in. I love this part of the job. It's being able to see a problem before it gets huge or before it becomes a disciplinary matter. When we introduce ourselves at the beginning of the school to all the classrooms from preschool up to 8th grade, we tell them a lot of things, but one of them is that we are by design non-disciplinary, so we don't have that power by design, that we want them to be able to come to us with an issue or a problem so we can help them troubleshoot that. That is, I think, takes a lot of stress off them. I think we get a lot more conversations about that. I really try to use a lot of conflict resolution and restorative practice in regard to just, hey, we have a problem. We have to sit next to each other for the rest of the school year and the overnight trip and all the things and field trips. And so how are we going to get back to peaks? How are we going to get back to something? So we really want to lean into our empathy, our kindness, our community. We're a small group, so I really think that a big part of our job is to help them along in that journey. And sometimes it is teaching those skills. Sometimes it is teaching, accountability and ownership. I think that's what kids need, and I think that's what our society needs. I think it's great that they're learning it at this age. So we have a lot of those conversations and just talking about the reality that we're going to have to sit next to these people for the rest of the school year. That's a big piece. So we do one-to-one work, we do small group work, maybe that's a friend group. We've had plenty of lunch bunches, and that was by the students' request. And I said, hey, how about we have lunch together? Offered that. They thought that was a great idea. They would do it every day if we let them.
Yes.
So we had to put some boundaries on that, but it worked great. And I was really glad they put us on that. We also, I think it's great that our teachers know our kids so well. We will walk into the cafeteria and several staff will say, hey, someone's having an off day. Someone's, looks like something's happened there. I don't know what it is, but, they know. They are very aware and very savvy and just can pick up those, small tells. I appreciate that, and that really allows us to be proactive rather than reactive. I think we don't see big problems because I think we do a good job, I hope, of getting there before, really boils over. And if people don't want to talk, that's okay too. Like, we're not mandate conversation. So, that's a school counseling piece. We also teach sex, which teach the core social problem solving, social emotional learning skills, empathy, kindness, problem solving, critical thinking.
Growth mindset, which goes back to that making mistakes. I mean, try to emphasize not just mistakes. I made like 3 mistakes on my math test, but I made a mistake in how I interacted with this person or what I said. And then from that, talking about apologies. How can I apologize? How can I take ownership for what I said or what I did to restore that relationship?
Just normalizing that and just making that a part of our community and a part of how we do things. And it works, and it's not a huge peak, but it's just something that happens, and we need to get past it, and we need to get along with our day. The next slide, please. Thanks.
All right. So we, as Dr. Vanderbeck said before, wanted to talk a little bit about counseling versus discipline. So when it's in our wheelhouse versus when we need to send it over to Dr. Vanderbeck or Mr. Rodrigo at the high school level. So typical things that we work on are conflicts that happen, whether it's arguments, shifting alliances, different friends, hanging with different people, causing some feelings of being left out. How do you communicate that? How do you work through that with your friends? Temporary exclusion is kind of like what I talked about before, with they played with me yesterday, the day before, not today, they left me out, and I didn't want to play that game, I wanted to do something else. So that's more of us. Sometimes we handle it at recess. If we're out there, we can work in the moment. Sometimes kids will come in after recess, hey, I want to talk about what just happened and have a really big feeling. And maybe we'll bring in a couple other kiddos to talk through it, what happened, and work it out then in that moment. When it gets too big is when
I don't want you to, I know talking about this in terms of like this Venn diagram has no overlap, right? But this truly, there is an overlap and a team between the administration and our counseling. When things are escalating and they're outside of our behavioral expectations, then I typically take over. And it does not mean that I'm not working on the direct, explicit instruction of social skills either during those conversations. Oftentimes our problem, we refer to it as problem solving. When we're problem solving, we identify the problem. What happened? What could have happened differently? What would a replacement behavior look like? And then what are the natural and logical consequences of such a behavior, right? It's not about you did this, this is the punishment. It's about what happened? What could we have done differently? Let's practice that. Let's make sure that we're learning about that. If there's targeted learning that needs to happen, let's do that. And let's also have a realistic, logical consequence. It's not about necessarily overcorrection, right? It's about making sure that the learning is happening and that there's a logical consequence. And we do partner really well to make sure that what a typical conflict looks like, or a shifting friendship, or a temporary hurt that occurred, we work really closely to make sure that all of those aspects are addressed, whether there needs to be a disciplinary aspect of it too.
The way I look at this and the way I put this together in my head is really kind of protecting our community and kind of upholding the values that we want to have here at Moravian, and protecting the kids in those moments that, hey, this was not an okay thing. I think we need to take this one over to Dr. Internet. I get their permission to say, hey, can we have that conversation? Do you want me to have that conversation? Do you want to approach Dr. Vanderbeck? So we'll problem solve that. I've never had someone say they're not comfortable. And it's because we handle the part that we can, and then there needs to be something where it is more of a community issue, and there needs to be some learning or some accountability on the other side. And it's good that we have that division of responsibility and division of power.
And we've also had meetings together if we're not sure, right? We heard something happen at recess, could have been counseling, could have been discipline. So we'll pull both of us in with the kids and, all right, what happened? Tell us. And then sometimes it comes out, oh, it was just counseling. Sometimes, yep, it went across the line, and it's good that we're both there to figure out how to repair it, but also what the consequences are of that.
So you're hearing how the sausage is made. And often we'll say, and if this continues happening, or if this happens again, or if you don't follow the advice to give some space, then it's a Dr. Vanderbeck conversation, then it's a Mr. Enrico conversation. So we will remind them of those lines and, reinforce, hey, here's what we want you to do. This is what that looks like. Here's what we're expecting from you. It's giving space. I know you want to sit at that table, make a different choice, those kind of, things. And then I really love that I can see the kids in the hallway and say, hey, remember what we talked about, and kind of give them, a momentary, reminder, and then highlight it for them after. Hey, good job. You got through that. That was awesome. And just, we all want to get past those icky feelings, but I think it's really important to say, hey, that was successful. Well done. Get to it.
And I think all of this, tying back to it, like you're thinking in your brain, like, I really just want to hear about like health and balance. I think it's really important to pull it back up too, to say, we know that research says that when children feel like they belong, when children feel like they have adults that care about them and support them, they have better long-term academic outcomes than children who do not. So I think it's both about this academic programming, living in concert with the reality of when students feel like they're a part of the community where they're cared about, they tend to do better academically as an indirect or a direct result, right? So I think it's important that we tie it back to, it is both about making sure that our students feel comfortable and safe, and also as a result of those things, they're free to do the best that they can in their academics as well, right? They go hand in hand, and it's important. They're both important.
I think it's all of us.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So you might be thinking in your head, like, okay, so I'm a shepherd, I'm not an engineer. I want to make sure that I'm validating. So what are some strategies that we use and that are helpful to you? So things like conversation starters. And I can't stress this enough, maybe wait until after a snack. Yeah, review.
Angry for it.
Make sure that they've had a second to decompress, because there's a phenomenon called after school restraints collapse, and it is a real thing. I'm sure that you have experienced it. I have experienced it. It literally happens to me the moment that we walk away from extended care. And my child says, do you have a snack for me?
Yeah.
And usually I do, but sometimes I forget. And so like that, like truly you are back with your safe human, your parent.
Yeah.
And if you've been holding it together all day, you want to make sure that you're there for your friends, you're doing all your schoolwork, your teacher has a good reflection of you, all the things, and then you're with your safe person at the end of the day and you're like, that happens to my children. And so it's important, I think, for us to give them some time and space after the school day to kind of get back to their baseline, get their blood sugar back to where it needs to be, right? All of those things. And then I have this like Rolodex of questions I have in my head that isn't a general, how's your school day? What did you do school today? Lisa DeMore, I don't know if we're able to go to the piece information session. She talks about how, yeah, it's hard to answer that question. How was your school day? If you were to come home from work and you have your spouse or someone ask you like, how are your meetings? Oh, they were fine. I had one meeting and then I got a drink of water and I went to another, but they were my meetings, right? Like that's kind of how children feel. Like, yeah, I had science lab and Mr. Conrad was great and all the things. And then I went to eat a leg and I never felt. Like for them, it's like asking them how the meetings were. And so trying to think of more specific questions. I ask my 4-year-old all the time, what silly happened today? And it elicits like this fun part of their brain, and then all of the things start to come out. It's about like finding those actual questions that will get them to tell you the things. I also find out that, bedtime's at 7:45. If I ask the question at 7:40, I get all sorts of information, right? So it's about finding that sweet spot with your kids about when and where and how to ask the questions, rather than those generalized like, how's your school day? Right? I genuinely want to know how your school day was, but it's about, and one would almost use the word engineering. It's about figuring out how to ask those questions when and how. 7:42 is the sweet spot. Understanding that we might need to help our children, understanding that broad friendship circles, particularly at their age, are more beneficial. And sometimes it's about like, hey, I noticed that your teacher said that you were playing soccer at recess rather than playing on the playground. That's amazing. Is there anyone from, I don't know, from the soccer team that you might want to have play date with this weekend? And maybe it's not like their person that they're always playing with. Making sure that we're role playing conflict resolution at home. There's great books that can help you do this. I have a whole part of my child's library that is essentially about conflict resolution. And then you read those books all the time and like run through the scripts and like, hey, if this happened at school, how would you handle it? I really find that children's literature can help me start those conversations at home without it feeling like, okay, we're gonna sit down, we're gonna role play it. So I took your toy and let's do this. Or someone said like, they were gonna play unicorns with you. This is a real conversation I had with them. Someone said they were gonna play the unicorn fairy game with you in recess, but then they chose not to. Let's role play that, right? So sometimes children's literature can be that gateway into having those conversations. And then having those conversations with your kiddos that celebrates kindness and empathy and those character traits rather than we're not sure that to every single birthday party or like if you're the most popular kid in class. And I don't think anyone here would ever say that, but like really focusing on raising those characteristics of kindness, empathy. I saw you checking in with your friend during dismissal. Did they have a hard day? Thank you for checking on them. That's amazing. Thank you for doing that, right? Those specific pieces of praising. I'm sorry, I said
No, you're good. I was gonna add too, because we get the unique gift of seeing the kids in action. The teachers are a great resource.
Yeah.
If something happened today, or like, can you, even just giving them a heads up, okay, I wanna start doing some of these things. Can you help me find moments, like, I'll use my daughter, Emmy, help someone clean out their desk today after she was done with her desk. My teacher emailed me that, so then I can then, I heard you were really kind to your friend and help them. Tell me more about that. What was that like? And starting those types of conversations.
Looking for kids with similar interests, and maybe tagging the teachers for, hey, we're looking for, you know, maybe some play dates or they're really into being physically active. Is there anyone else you can think of? Like, and you know, meeting some of those families and meeting some of those kids and having some of those experiences outside school would be really fun and really just a different environment, especially when you kind of strip out the other kids from the class, and that can facilitate connections and friendships and relationships with parents. So I think we do a lot of work here at school, and you know, we talk about kindness. We talk a lot about conflict resolution. We talk a lot about being a community member and talking about that in your family, how you guys live that as a family. And I think you guys did all the things. Yeah.
All right. This is how to get in touch with us. That cute little dinosaur there will take you to our Connect with a Counselor form. So it's good to have for your kiddos if they want to connect with us, or you guys can use that form as well. Something comes up. You're like, hey, this might be a good opportunity to connect. That's the way.
There's a parent dropped out. That's a parent, and you leave your contact information. And our kids are getting really good at using this, and yeah, they're keeping
It's
us
like
busy.
5 in our inbox right now.
Yeah, they're keeping us busy, but it's great because they're identifying, hey, there's a problem. I think I need to do something. That's great. All right, what are we gonna do? Do you have any ideas? All right, let's problem solve together. I think this is kind of how our meetings work. Because we don't have a lot of time, but kind of teaching them those proactive, problem-based, critical thinking skills. And we really want to work with you guys too. So if there's an issue, you want to troubleshoot something, if it's not a Vanderbeck disciplinary issue, we're glad to have a confidential private conversation that specifically deals with the situation at hand. And it might be, how can we help? This is something that we can bring up. This is something that we can look for some different connections. Is there someone maybe in a different grade that has similar interests that they're want to geek out on history also, or something like that?
I just had a couple of questions. When you said that you reached out to them for the fifth grade, Do you have, what does that look like? Do you have regular intervals when you reach out and make sure the grades? Or is it only if something comes up and kind of you collectively with the class?
No, we meet, so with the second step, curriculum, we're in there every week, for lessons. And sometimes the lesson will look like exactly what we're supposed to do that next week. Sometimes, depending if there's an issue that came up over the week, or teachers might give us a heads up, hey, we're struggling with kindergarten, keeping our hands to ourselves and sitting in our own space. We'll talk about personal space that week. So it depends. Usually we stick to what each week's supposed to be, but again, we can do more targeted stuff as well.
Sometimes it's sprinkled in.
Yes.
And other times it's the heavy. It's, hey, we have an issue. We need to talk about this. And everyone knows that, what we're going to be talking about when we bring it up. Sometimes we will bring in Dr. Vanderbeck and say, this is where we end and this is where Dr. Vanderbeck. So it's kind of a group warning. Before I teach SEL, each time I will ask the teacher, really briefly, is there anything they need to hear? And that's my cue for, let me know if there's something that I need to prompt or, make a plug for, above what we normally do in second step. So we see the kids at 20 minutes once a week. So we have a lot of touch points. And there's often times where we'll be asked by a grade level or a teacher to have a whole group conversation about an issue. And that, and then that's trying to be proactive rather than reactive.
How much are you evaluating girls versus boys in a classroom? And if so, is that detrimental? Do we want to combat that, or is that normal
I
development?
love that question. Yeah, we're a small environment, so it is really tough to segregate your group even more when it's already tiny, which I think is one of the great things about independent school, that you can, you don't have that luxury. If people in a better environment, in a bigger environment, I will especially to my middle schoolers, I'll be like, hey, the girls also have interests and hobbies and things like that too. And they will look at me very funny. And I'm like, no, really? And, trying to make a plug for that. And it's the thing that no one wants to think about or see. So that's more in the middle school where I'll be much more explicit about that. I think even echoing something like that at home would be very, very helpful and even powerful.
I think a lot of that is developmental though, like
For sure.
girls stick with the girls, boys stick with
For
the
sure.
boys up until
And
they're stringent.
And I think it's a fine line between, I wouldn't encourage that, but I think it is developmental and appropriate. It is pretty normal for them to do that. So knowing that that's bound to happen or going to happen, but not foreclosing on that is that's what's going to happen.
And then when it crosses into if your inside thoughts unkind when they come out, that's kind of when it crosses into my realm. If you're saying unkind things to the boys without the boys, then that's when we talk about that's not okay. And also let's keep those thoughts in there.
Or life skill too.
Do you see some of that at recess? Boys versus girls, and then the Gaga ball in first and second grade, boys versus girls, fourth and fifth, third and fourth, sometimes the games. Would be like just a way to separate the team.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Not like to be mean.
It's not a gender thing.
Yeah.
That's a trait, and they don't have the sophistication of doing it by hair color or things like that. It's just it's very simplistic, and it has less to do with gender other than, that's just something observable, or they're wearing the jumper, and we're wearing the.
As a mom, it's always a struggle for me to kind of find a sweet spot when to get involved. It's a very gray area. It's like, and I was listening to your educational session and the one we had just recently, that the woman was defining, okay, if it's uncomfortable, let the child handle it. If it's unmanageable, they get involved. But how come I trust a 5-year-old telling me what is uncomfortable, what is unmanageable? Like I have to kind of figure it out, or even my 8-year-old, So that's valid for older ages, but for younger, we have to kind of, it's our understanding of what is unmanageable. And it's sometimes very difficult to know really what is unmanageable, what as a mom I cannot tolerate. And it's unmanageable for me, not the kid.
Right.
So what are the nuggets? What are the signs we have to
I think you know your kid, and I think everyone knows their kid best. And it's that insurance sense that this is bigger than normal. That this is maybe a pattern of things that we're seeing. And you know, this just seems different. And maybe if you're going through your mental problem solving, you know, are they feeling sick? Is this a long day? Is this, you know, really big situation? If it extends for longer than it normally does, like intensity, and it's, you know, going on, or it's, you know, keep coming up in conversation, like they can't let it go. I think help is being able to pick things up and put things down, right? If they're holding on to that, that's a problem. That's something that we want to, you know, proactively handle. We're also, you know, glad to, you know, talk through some of that and check in with the teachers and, you know, kind of get a bird's eye view of things to give you more insight and to also be on the lookout and, you know, ask the teachers, what do you see in class? You know, what's conflict resolution look like? How's the playground? You will walk out on the playground. You know, kids think we just want to hang out with them. That's where the magic happens, right? And that's a great part of our job. We get to hang out on the playground, have some of those conversations. So, I would trust your gut in that. And I also don't want you to make yourself exhausted by worrying so much that I miss something. Things, if they're a big issue, they will keep coming up. They will walk you over the head. They will shake you by the lapels, right? I think it's that, you know, the repetitiveness and that's what I would look for. But you also know your kids. Sometimes you have that sense of this is different. Sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong too.
Like it's a little trial and error too,
Yeah.
right? Like something might feel bigger in a moment and then contact us and let us know. And be able to report back and say like, that's what happens to report is that we're not seeing that. This is the context of what we're seeing, right? Or you may report something that he or she is reporting to you and say, yeah, okay, that's founded and that's the problem solved, how we're gonna work through that, right? There is no perfect science, right? Perfect parenting is impossible. It's really just doing our best through series of mistakes, essentially, right? And so sometimes we will err on the side of caution, and sometimes we might let something go a little bit longer than maybe it should have, right, as parents. But really over time, it's about narrowing that error, right? Like if you're thinking about it from an engineering perspective, right? It's about reducing the error over time. It's never.
And we'll be honest with you. We will always give that feedback. And sometimes there is an issue or sometimes like we're really not seeing it. But boy, are we glad to have that in the back of our head. Boy, are we glad to hear that's what it looks like outside of school because they're going to bring that in school something. I think that's super important. Yeah.
And also based on this presentation, my understanding was it's better to have a lot of good friends rather than one or two best friends, right?
Yeah.
Maybe interfering with the dynamic or like encourage it indirectly, or we just let them be.
If it's problematic and if it's detrimental, I would. Other than that, I think naturally letting it play itself out and letting it organically happen. And I think the most important thing is being there for your kid and being able to help them identify, hey, this is a problem. How can I problem solve this? Give them a hug, you know, meet them where they're at in that moment, and they need a parent. And we're not going to pick up everything. It's, you know, are my people supportive? Are they consistent? Are they reliable? I think, you know, if we're looking at ourselves, that's what we want to kind of judge our parenting skill at. Is are we responsive? And in those moments, they need a parent, you know, they need a mom, they need a dad, they need a caregiver. Yeah.
But to your point, having a broader friend group typically is more helpful as students are younger, as children are younger. But then as adults, we actually see that shift, that there's greater like happiness outcomes, like that greater life satisfaction when we have kind of like all. But it shifts over time. Having a broader friend group when you're younger can be. I can really just help us through to not have like that one person.
Yes.
Because when that one person is rocky in a relationship when you're younger, then it feels insurmountable, like a bigger challenge. Right? But when we're able to kind of spread out that need for reliability and consistency over multiple people over younger, that helps kind of minimize that.
Yes.
Yes.
One thing when I've been here for this, I'm going my third year. Yeah. Is in middle school, I would hear a narrative over and over and over again when I'm hearing the story. And again, coming at it from a psychologist perspective of, I would see things when they get big. We had this beef in third grade and now it continued and we always felt like that. I'm like, whoa, we need to not continue that. So that's what our work is to work on conflict resolution, work on repair. If you have to go on the overnight with this person, like you can't never talk to them again. And it's not realistic as much as you want to throw the baby out in the bathwater. Good luck. So the reality is we have to work through these things, and I really like that part of what you do, and it's working. And you know, the relation working on rebuilding that and being able to be friends with the whole group and being at least kind to the whole group, and you know, finding the joy of lots of people rather than, you know, connection with few.
I think one of the things that I've heard, you know, is English versus Spanish, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
That's where I feel so sad. Like, as much as I love the programs, I don't, but I don't know how it is in different schools. But I know, like, now where one of my biggest things is like, oh, like from my eldest middle school, like fifth grade was hard. Like, she was good. She made new friends for her friends. They felt that social anxiety. But I think overall, looking at my second child and seeing like the play is a great place for them to meet other kids that are in their grade or other grades, and they're mixing. It helps them. Like,
that I would work on that shepherding and really even stepping into the engineering and maybe even like saying, hey, let's try other stuff. Let's get outside of our comfort zone with that. And the Spanish immersion is a little chameleon, really, for good and bad, maybe even dysfunctional, right? Like, and there is life outside of that little bubble.
and it does. I mean, it progresses. It seems like a lot here. You get to middle school and you're in orchestra with kids from 8, 9, you know, like not 9, but 8. It's a big class. So it feels like a lot, but I feel like it gets better.
Yes, yeah, and there's a world out there. There's a lot of great stuff and a lot of great people. And maybe there's other people in the same stuff you are that you might want to hang out with. It's a good point.
When a student asks to come to see you or they're involved with something with another student, do you guys send us emails or kind of listen?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah, especially when there's things that the student shares that I think would be helpful working with parents, absolutely. And the email might look like, depending on what went down, so-and-so was in my office today, they did a great job working through this conflict.
We met with another student.
Too. He was posted on your conversation. I won't post if there's anything else we can do, but
Yeah, and we prime, we do that to one, you know, we tell kids that parents are our best partner, and I think it's something parents want to hear about. And here's what I want to say. They're probably going to ask who's what. Think about how you want to have that conversation. So we'll kind of prime that home for you a little bit. But yeah, we want to let you know that, you know, they reached out, there's something up, and that give you a little bit of information that maybe that's a conversation to have, maybe that's letting it lie. And sometimes kids are able to say, no, we passed it, it was an issue, but you know, we're good now. And I think that's also a really good thing to kind of let them lead that, also developmentally appropriate, a younger child, maybe less so, but
And that does look different than when I meet your child. And
yes.
They're just, we're gonna have to talk together. Like that conversation looks really different.
Yep.
So we should be worried when they come to your office.
No, we still do lots of skill building when they come to my office.
We have lots of points of contact with kids, and we hold a lot of doors open. And it's, you know, conversations. Literally. Yeah, we're at the front door, we're at the back door. We watch the buses go down. At lunch, we will hold the door open, and it's seeing their faces. It's, you know, giving them a momentary moment, letting them know that we're around, and also, an opportunity for a brief conversation. If it's one of those brief conversations, we would only be emailing parents, but if it's something that's substantive and that would be value added for you here, absolutely.
And it's not hindering that. Nope.
Yep, no, we are very, 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 very good about it.
Yeah. We're cool, we're not that cool.
Yeah,
Sorry, guys.
they often will have snacks and
Yeah.
quite popular as well.